Welcome to the Keepers of Nerddom. I'm Chris, and this is Cody. Today we're going to be talking about Fallout, the series, and our favorite games in it. And Cody here has some power-esque armor that he's wearing for us.
It was the closest thing I had to a power armor helmet, since especially like the stuff that they had for it didn't actually like do well and it had to be recalled because of what was it, mold.
Yeah, that's what you were saying.
So yeah, not a great thing. Can we just take a moment to appreciate the fact that Bethesda had a really bad run with Fallout games in their merchandise because they've had to recall the helmets.
Yeah. They had the canvas bags that ended up being nylon.
Right. And then the Nuka rum, or Nuka Dark rum, that was supposed to be a glass bottle, which it was inside of a plastic cased bottle.
But everyone thought that the glass bottle was going to be the Nuka bottle shape.
Yeah. And I think it was over $100. It was some crazy expensive number. They've had a lot of moments where they've messed up. I just realized I forgot about my Fallout bobblehead. I think he's up there. You should grab him. But it's okay.
Where is he?
I think he's right there. Go grab him. So let me take this off as Chris is grabbing our thing for talking through. We are going to be going through the Fallout series, and we're going to also have a secondary video. Yeah, there he is. Talking about the DLCs, because the DLCs really, they make the Fallout games in many ways, and some of them really, really make the game.
Yeah.
But we're gonna run through the Fallout series, kind of highlight some of our favorites and why, without going into fully all the DLC stuff, because there's a lot to cover just in the DLCs. But there's been several games. We've had Fallout 1 and 2 that were the old games by the original studio, and they are very much turn-based combat and story, and they're top-down kind of things that are old school. And there was also a Brotherhood of Steel game around that time as well from the original creators.
Yeah.
I haven't played that game at all.
The turn-based or the real-time strategy.
Yeah. Actually, I take that back. I think I played like all of 5 minutes and I just got not bored with it, but just busy with other things.
Tactics.
Yes. We also then had Bethesda got a hold of it, and Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 were those big entries. And then in between there was Fallout New Vegas that was done by Obsidian. And lastly, so far, we have...
I don't want to be the one to say the name of it.
Yeah. It was so funny because Fallout 76... It sounded exciting.
Yeah, I was so excited. I pre-ordered it like the day after the pre-order was released because the site shut down the night the pre-order was released.
Right.
So I pre-ordered it the day after, and I pre-ordered the Tricentennial Edition that had like an Uncle Sam costume and a bunch of other like just like cosmetic things that you got in it. But I was so disappointed with the beta when I started playing it that even though I have all these cosmetic things, I haven't even downloaded the full game. It
was actually a few games right before that caused me to not want to pre-order things, and I'm so glad because Fallout 76 sounded exciting, and then when we saw gameplay...
Not just saw, trust me, when we played gameplay.
Yeah, and when people experienced it, I went, man, I am so glad I didn't pre-order that, because there was a lot of promises that Todd had made about that game, and they weren't there. It was everything Cyberpunk 2077 has done with the PlayStation 2 graphics at times, where it just doesn't load in right.
Yeah.
And so Fallout 76 had interesting promise, and they didn't deliver. And sadly, there's a lot of lessons that they learned, I think, from that, but not good lessons. So, at least if we made a list, where would you put the bottom at?
76.
Yeah, and you haven't played many of the first original games, have you?
No, I put them above 76.
It doesn't even matter.
Were they? Who was it that made that? Was that Interplay that made those?
I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank.
I want to say it was Interplay, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, and actually, I don't even have my Fallout 3 game because I loaned it out to a friend just a few days ago to play it because I was been playing the DLCs for Fallout 3, 2 of them that I had never purchased, and I purchased earlier this year, and finally decided I'm going to sit down and play them, and I've been having a blast. Yeah, it's fascinating. So you haven't played the original ones, though.
No.
Okay, so the interesting thing about this is from Fallout 3 onward, they're three-dimensional. They're not just turn-based, but you do have some turn-based stuff with the VAT system. But the original games were a top-down or kind of side top down with this perspective of turn-based combat. And there's very little to instruct you in some ways unless you have the instruction manual. It was massive. And so when you buy this game separate, unless you like download an instruction manual, you just kind of have to learn. And I remember screwing up. Like, I loved the first game. And I believe I played a decent amount of the second one, but I don't remember how far I got. Just because I got onto other things. But the first game I loved, but I had to actually restart because I didn't understand something. I took a perk, and I played all these other games actually before I played the Fallout 1. I took a perk that gave me more damage. But I didn't realize how important it was that I would be able to target individual body parts. And that perk stopped me from doing that.
I've heard a lot of people online say that the first time they played through, they were like, this sounds awesome, and then then the game's not playable.
It really is not. I got to points where I was fighting Deathclaws, and you have to be able to shoot a Deathclaw's legs in order to stop them. And it's funny, it's still a mechanic that's important even today, because if you can shoot the Deathclaw's legs, you can backpedal away from them faster than they can run at you.
Yeah.
And so then they won't do the crazy stuff that will typically one or two shot you. And so without the ability to target specific body parts without just random luck, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And it was terrible. But it was also, I was like, man, that was my fault. I didn't do my homework. And so that was the interesting thing. I can't blame the game necessarily. I wish the game would have explained it a little better.
Yeah.
But it was my fault.
But the first time you play through, you don't know how important targeting body parts is going to be. You just think, shoot them, they die.
Right. And I was more effective at that. So and for most of the game, 2/3 of the game, it was working great. And all of a sudden I got into Deathclaw territory and these heavier super mutants, and I couldn't do what I needed to. And so it was a good game. It really was. The story is simple in many ways, but they have a little bit of voice acting whenever they pull up the little menu with the Pip-Boy. And it's funny to see the things you think that Bethesda has created, they didn't. Most of their stuff in many ways came from the original games. They just updated it, which is interesting. Like, really, the original games, they had the creativity, and the Bethesda stuff, they just went that next step. And and so they're better games in many ways, but it's also they learned all these lessons from the previous stuff. And so I would never say discount Fallout 1 and 2 as bad games. They're not. They're just different.
And I've just never played them, but I've watched gameplay, and I enjoy watching gameplay of them.
Yeah, and it's also just how much older they are. So you're just different eras as well. That's what's so weird. Like, you're literally playing a game series that has lasted through eras of how games work. And good games.
And I feel like I would really like them if I did play them, because from everything I've seen, they're very Dungeons and Dragons-esque, which I love. It's you move so many spaces or squares or whatever, kind of like you do in Dungeons and Dragons. All the attacks are dice roll based. Yeah. And then while you're moving from one place to another, there's chances of random encounters happening.
Yes. And what's funny is there's even in the very first game, there was random things that would happen out in the wilderness, in the desert, when you were wandering around, that, like, you would see Doctor Who's spaceship.
Yeah.
Just cause.
I was watching one gameplay that was ridiculous because, like, when the guy was going from the vault that he started in to the first place he had to go, the random encounter he met was like this truck that had like 200,000 caps in it. So he just immediately started with, I'm going to buy everything.
That's awesome. And that's what makes that game so unique, like playing through it and realizing most of the things that you actually experience in later games were present in some form or some basic form. Not everything, because I don't remember if all of the robots and stuff that you would see, like Mr. Handies and Robo Brains and things like that, were in that. I don't remember. But a lot of that stuff, and I even think in the very first game you could get companions to follow you and work with you. I think so, which is really cool. Side note, I did see somebody talk about companions in the games, and they often ranked Dogmeat as pretty low, even in Fallout 3. But Fallout 3 has this funny game mechanic with Dogmeat that he's broken. If you grab him early, he levels up with you by getting essentially like doubling his health, I think, every time, or something crazy. And so he gets bonkers. And like I was just playing actually Fallout 3 last night and firing essentially a rocket launcher right at Dogmeat to kill the stuff that was attacking him. And Dogmeat was taking nothing because his health pool from level, when I found him level 1 or 2, to now I'm almost level 30, he doesn't die. You know, if he dies, you know he's literally being attacked by 4 albino rad scorpions. You know, like, it's gotta be something that is just wrecking him.
And while we're on this topic, let's just take a moment of silence, because at the time of recording this, about 2 weeks ago, the German Shepherd that inspired Dogmeat passed.
Oh. Alright.
Okay.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Sad day.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that were pretty upset.
Wow. That's a random factoid.
Yeah, I'm good at those.
But that's important. So, you haven't played many of the old stuff, and I haven't played the tactics thing with the Brotherhood very much.
Yeah,
I played a little bit of it.
I started in Fallout 3.
Yeah. And so
I feel like that's where a lot of people started.
Yeah, well, they did, because before that, it was just this little niche game. And Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 are really good, and they're a lot of fun. And
it was PC only as well.
You even get introduced to, I think it might be even in Fallout 1, but at least in Fallout 2, the tree guy from Fallout 3.
Yes.
And it's crazy. Like, he shows up, and Bethesda just went, let's continue this random, pointless, odd story. And it's awesome. And then in Fallout 3, it's kind of sad, too. Like, it is really sad, because now he's stuck as a tree. Like,
Which I didn't get this connection because I didn't play the older games when I played.
I remember having played Fallout 3, and then going back and playing that, and then finding this guy, and he's talking about a tree ground, so I'm like, no, that can't, no. And sure enough, it is. And also,
I believe there's also a super mutant that is in Fallout 4, I want to say, that's in one of the older games.
There's some connection there, and I can't remember.
There's a super mutant who's friendly, and he can be he's not a companion, but he helps you.
Yeah, I think it's in a snowy area.
Yeah, it's in like a hotel or something like that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and I can't remember his name. But yeah, there's a connection there from an older game. And there's the other thing is sometimes you get the weird stuff of some of the games are out of order as well, in the sense of they happen at different time frames. And so, I think Fallout 4 is it earlier than some of the other ones?
I think I want to say that it's set just a few months after Fallout 3.
Okay. And that's just the interesting thing is sometimes you're piecing together bits and details that they're not quite in the same order, because I think Fallout 76 is like super early.
Yeah, I think that it was like long before at least 3 and 4.
Yeah, which they actually have continuity problems with the Brotherhood being present where they are, because they're not supposed to be there yet.
Yeah,
according to the lore of other games, which is interesting. So let's work through these. Fallout 3 was probably that initial thing. Thoughts on Fallout 3?
I mean, it's the game that got me hooked on the Fallout series.
Yeah, it's got great story. Yeah, it's got companions. It has, is it Liam Neeson that voices his dad?
Yes.
Yeah, which that's just always awesome because Liam Neeson. But
Bethesda's surprisingly good with getting big actors.
They are.
They got Neil Patrick Stewart for Oblivion.
Really?
Yeah, he played Uriel Septim in the beginning.
No, that's Patrick Stewart for the king that dies at the very beginning of the game.
That's what I meant. I said Neil Patrick Stewart.
I know. I was like,
I'm dumb. No, Patrick Stewart.
That's funny.
I was trying to mix his name with Neil Patrick Harris.
Yeah. I was like, Neil Patrick Harris?
No.
Okay, whatever.
Patrick Stewart.
So, good and bad of Fallout 3. Go.
Good is, I felt like it was immersive. I loved that you could basically take whatever off of anyone that you killed. So I loved getting power armor and just random crazy powerful weapon. I would say for me the biggest downside is once you beat the game, it's done. There's no playability afterwards once you hit that point.
And that right there is my big negative, because until the DLCs, the game just ends.
Yeah.
And you can't send the super mutant in to do the thing. He's like, no, you got to do it.
Yeah.
Why? Just do it. Like,
yeah.
And thankfully their DLCs fix that and make it a continuous game. And they realize that and they learned that lesson for later. I think it's also after you play these other games, Fallout 3, some of the weaknesses of Fallout 3 show through of customization and guns and things because you see what more they could do.
Yeah.
And so in some ways it becomes less of a game, but at the same time it also becomes more of a game because of that, because it's simple. Because it's one thing you don't have to think about. And one big praise I will give to this game is I think it and New Vegas have the same essentially leveling system as far as perks and how that functions. And Fallout 4 is terrible about this. I don't like their leveling system. It's not good. Because you just keep leveling up. There is no customization.
Yeah.
In the sense of you just get perks in a different order.
Which that was how Skyrim was as well.
Right, and I don't appreciate
where
that.
Where you could end up maxing everything.
Yeah.
Whereas in New Vegas and Fallout 3, you had to make choices. Because if you made the wrong choice, once you get to a point, you can't make more choices because there's a level cap.
Exactly. And level cap, while you may not like it, is important because then it forces you to think about what you are.
And but that also goes for gameplay. Because like you like playing... or gameplay styles, because like you like playing on like the hardest mode, you want to make it difficult for yourself, whereas I'll play on normal mode, and when I'm playing on PC I'll use console commands to max out everything and just go through and blasting.
Right. And that's the fact that they can do that. Awesome. I enjoy putting it at the hardest difficulty just to see if I can survive, because the way I've looked at these games is the simple truth is a Fallout game should be, if you're going to really live the idea of coming out of a vault with no experience in everything, turn the difficulty up to 11 just to see if you can.
And I totally understand where you're coming from.
No,
I just like casual sci-fi blasting.
Having the fun, I totally get it. For me, it's just that idea of, I wonder if this actually would be what it would feel like. And there are many times where I go, yep. The simple truth is power armor is powerful, but it shouldn't stop you from getting gunned down by a super mutant with a tri-beam laser, you know?
Yeah.
You should die.
Yeah.
And I will say the one thing that all Bethesda games typically have had a very serious problem about until you get
is bugs.
Well, that's a whole other thing. Until you get into, I think it's Fallout 4, where the stim packs, once you put it on the higher difficulty, they actually slowly heal you. Otherwise, it's the same thing that they've had in Skyrim and Oblivion and all the other games of
pause the game, eat a bunch of food, keep fighting.
Yep, eat the cheese wheels, and then all of a sudden you're back. And I've been playing on the hardest difficulty, and all of a sudden I just pause real quick, stim pack myself, and I'm good.
Yeah.
That's the one thing of realism lack, but you need it because there's times where these things, they will hit you that hard.
Yeah.
And especially once you hit some of the DLCs raising the level cap on some of these things. Ugh.
So which game would you say is your favorite? DLC is not included.
DLC is not included. Okay. Ugh, that's even harder then. That's it. That's just it, Chris. I'll be honest. I struggle because I like all three of these games. I didn't play New Vegas for years because I heard it was buggy. And then when I finally did just last year, I had an absolute blast. But I also had all the DLCs in there. And so we'll come back to the DLCs. But the customization of New Vegas was fantastic. But I grew up on Fallout 3. And so I have a special place in my heart for that one. Fallout 4, the Institute, was fascinating. The idea that they took this itty bitty little thing that they did in Fallout 3 of the synth mission, where you find a rogue synth being chased after in the aircraft carriers when you first encounter the mission, and then they explored it completely in Fallout 4. And the synth institute, the institute is like crazy clean and nice.
Yeah.
I love that. And so I don't know that I could really pick very well. Because for me, it would be pretty easy for me to just go Fallout 3 just because that's what I knew. But New Vegas, I now have a very special place in my heart for that game. Because of the customization, because of what Obsidian did with it. And Obsidian did the Knights of the Old Republic games, I believe.
I don't know about that. I haven't
the
played
KOTOR
those
games. And needless to say, those games are fantastic. I do believe that was them. And so you see how they can tell a story and weave this interesting thing. And also the voice actor for Mr. House in Fallout New Vegas is Odo from it's Renee Aberjonis. He just passed away a few years ago. And just really good. I don't know. Probably Fallout 3, but it would be hard because Fallout 4, the leveling system really irritates me, but the game is so good.
Yeah.
And New Vegas, the game is so good and so interesting, and these areas are so full of weird. I take it back. There's one exception. New Vegas does have one negative. Cazadors.
Oh, I love having Cazadors around.
Well, it goes back to putting the difficulty where I did.
Yeah.
Because in Fallout 3 and even in Fallout 4, you see a bloatfly. You go, okay, easy mode. Even on the hardest difficulty, 1 or 2 shots, done, move on. And so you see a Cazador for the first time in New Vegas. And you go,
like,
it's a fly.
Yeah,
it's a bug.
Bloatflies aren't bad.
It's not going to be bad. And you start firing, you go,
oh no.
Why is this taking... And all of a sudden it stings you and go, that took over 1/3 of my health. And I'm poisoned.
And it's faster than me.
Yes. And so that irritated the crap out of me. And I get it, and I'm glad for it in some ways, but yet I was like, no! So that was one negative of Fallout New Vegas. I think that was the biggest negative of the base game that I could actually put.
Okay.
What's yours? Go.
Fallout New Vegas.
Why?
I'm not going to sit here and debate it because I love this. I love the stories in 3 and 4. They're a ton of fun. There were twists and turns that I didn't expect, and I was like, what? But when it comes right down to it, like on Fallout 3, you're on this noble quest to help your people. In Fallout 4, you're on this noble quest to find your child. And in Fallout New Vegas, I'm a mailman, I'm mad, and I'm coming for you, Benny.
It's true. I love that, actually.
You're an absolute nobody. You know nothing about your life before. You know that for some reason or another, you're a courier, and you're carrying this special chip, and then Benny's like, the game was rigged from the start. Sorry, kid. And then you go get him.
I will say, I think New Vegas has one of the most interesting starts to the game.
Yeah.
Also, the doctor that fixes you up in New Vegas is the voice of the second in command on Battlestar Galactica.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Series. Yeah, I love that actor too.
Yeah, but I just love how from the very beginning, like they line up, like these are good guys, these are bad guys, go kill the bad guys. These people are
siren test.
Yeah, it's a Wednesday in the Midwest, so the tornado sirens are going off.
Do make sure we know, just in case.
And then you just start off with these powder gangers showing up to attack Good Springs, and you shoot them, and as soon as you shoot the first one, you're like, oh, I got good karma. Blah, 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 blah.
That's one thing I forgot about with New Vegas is the introduction to dynamite. Like, that's not in any other game as far as I can remember at all. Because you have grenades and stuff, but dynamite's different. Because it...
But it makes sense for the area that it's
No. I'm not saying a bad thing. I'm saying this is really fun. Because you light it, and then there's actually a timer. Because you can hold a grenade indefinitely in Fallout 3 and all the
because as long as you keep that spoon down, you're good.
Yeah. Spoon.
I think that's what that's called.
I don't remember. Maybe. But just, it's so funny because you can time the dynamite. If you're not careful, you can really time the dynamite and kill yourself.
Because you light a fuse and there's no holding that.
It's just a funny thing because it gives you a game mechanic that's so derpy but awesome. because it's based on your skill, and I like that.
And then there was other things that I liked. Like I love the Wild Wasteland perk, where like just random different funny things would happen.
Yeah.
Like.
And I love the icon that pops up in the corner.
Yeah,
with this.
and you hear the ooh.
Yeah.
But like my favorite one, well, I have a bunch that I like, but one of my favorite ones is there's a cave that you get the varmint rifle, which is a special, like the smallest version of a rifle that you can get.
Yeah.
But normally you go in there and you fight mole rats.
Right.
But if you have a Wild Wasteland, you go in there and you fight ROUSs, rodents of unusual size.
That's right. I've done that.
From Princess Bride.
Right.
And then if you get the expansions, if you do the Native American one, then you have it's like two bears fighting with
I remember it.
Chainsaw or something like that.
But we're not talking about DLCs.
Yeah,
but yes. But you're right. I was glad you recommended that perk, and it changed
just
the
makes things
game
fun.
in lots of little ways, and it was great.
And I like the Bloody Mess perk, which is in a few of the games that like it gives you more damage and you see
sure
bodies
it was even
explode.
in Fallout 1.
Okay.
Like it's that old of a perk. Oh, side note, Fallout 4. Two things about it. One really cool thing is legendary items can just spawn based on random encounters. So you'll fight a legendary boss kind of thing, and they'll always have a legendary equipment item.
And I would occasionally farm them by saving, going back to my save, and re-killing legendary bosses to get the weapon I wanted.
Because they would already be there, technically, if you were in the area.
Yeah, the legend, and there were some places that legendary bosses were specifically at.
Yeah.
But they didn't drop the same weapon every time.
Right.
That was
you
random.
Could farm it, which is really cool. Or pieces of armor that were legendary.
Yeah.
And usually the customization. And I will say that Fallout 4's customization was epic. Like Fallout New Vegas, they showed the way to Fallout 4 creators what to do, and they did a really good job with stuff. But then New Vegas took it to that next, or Fallout 4 took it to the next level of armor, even and weapons, and changing the look and feel of them completely. Really cool, and they learned all that from New Vegas, and I'm glad what New Vegas did. Sometimes I will say New Vegas was a little confusing when it came to the bullet types and like changing them to exactly how effective they were. If that makes sense. There was just a lot of little layers to that they didn't explain real well.
Yeah, and part of that is I don't know why they expected, I mean, let's be honest, nerds to know all this stuff. Like there is stuff in that game that relies on you knowing about how actual ammunition works to know how effective things were.
Yeah. Because they give you a really basic, like the first person that you talk to about it, explanation, but it's not enough that you
there's so many different types of ammo for so many different weapons. There's reloaded ammo, new ammo, and then the crazy thing is like they're accurate enough to be like, hey, this weapon can shoot 223 or 556, which is a real thing.
Right.
But like not everyone's gonna think, I can put two different ammos in this one gun.
It was a little too much.
Yes.
But I will say Fallout 4, while they had more customization options, it was just laid out a little better, more simply. But also they had settlements that were really fun and that you could customize.
I know that you did a lot with that.
I
didn't do a whole lot with that.
And that's okay. It was one of those things you could totally leave it, or you could mess around with it. And I found it was interesting because you could, if you set up a settlement right, you could come back there and have items waiting for you, purified water and potentially ammunition and other things they've scrounged for you.
I did enough settlement stuff that I had to for quests, and then I would leave.
Now, I will say the worst part about settlements was Preston Garvey. Because the fact that you always be like, another settlement needs your help, but he would never help unless you took him as a companion, and he wasn't a good companion because he had a terrible gun, the laser musket.
Yeah.
They're just too slow. But Fallout 4 had some problems, but yet it had some of the most entertaining side things you could do. And then like Nick Valentine as an NPC was just fantastic.
Oh, he was really cool.
Strong was one of the worst, just because you never wanted to hear about the kindness of human milk or whatever.
Yeah.
The milk of human kindness. It was weird. I think also Fallout 3 had one of the most unique places to visit in the sense of
Fallout 3 did?
Yes, because Washington, D.C. So you were... just the idea that you could explore what was left of our government's history, see what buildings had been destroyed. Because I think the White House had been nuked completely.
Yes. So fun fact about while they were preparing for like artwork and stuff for that, they had a designer who was walking around DC and taking a ton, like way too many pictures of different angles of monuments, so that they could get it in their art. Right. And he was approached, and he had been doing it for several days. So he was approached by some government agents, some federal agents, and he was asked why he was there, why he was taking so many pictures, what was he doing, and he said in an interview, he was like, well, I knew that I couldn't just say, well, I'm taking pictures to know how to properly blow up the Capitol, because that's what they were doing in the artwork. Right. So he just said, I'm sorry, I'll leave.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's really also what made me most interested in Fallout 3 in many ways, because you're focused in on the capital of the United States. Like, Bethesda went big when they went with that concept.
Yeah.
And it was a big map at the time. You know, there's bigger maps, but dang, there's so much in there.
For the time that it came out, it was huge.
Yeah, and there's a point where there's a historian on one of the settlements, the battleship settlement, that he sends you to go find different pieces of history. And so you're looking for like documents from the founding of America. And it's so much fun getting to find these things, because they were preserved before the war in like hermetically sealed things, and they still exist. And that's fun. You know, when you think back through these things, New Vegas is, you know, in Las Vegas area. And so some parts are interesting. Like New Vegas itself is really interesting to look at. It's a pretty spectacle, but a lot of the area isn't that, you know, same with Fallout 3 too. But you get into the downtown area, or at least in like, I'm in the Lincoln Memorial. Oh my gosh, you know. Or Fallout 4, what is it? Massachusetts?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, because the institute is the Commonwealth Institute of Technology, which is the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT.
That's right. And it's...
They call it the Commonwealth, but it's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
It's kind of a boring area.
I don't think so. I think there's a ton of history in that one too.
I'm not saying there's not, but I'm just saying there's not things like personally for me that I go, ooh. You know, if they had one in St. Louis, you know, and
I would love to have a Fallout in the Midwest.
Yeah, to see the arch blown up or some piece, because there was a sci-fi show that did that too. That it would just mean something different to me and you, versus like Massachusetts. I haven't been to Massachusetts, so it just doesn't mean as much to me. I haven't been necessarily to Washington, D.C. either, but
it's our nation's capital.
Right. Yeah. And so there's just that piece. And like Las Vegas, I haven't been there either, but at least I know some of these things. Yeah. So does that make sense? Like, it's just that, yes, there is history, but it's some history that I don't know much about. And was it Fallout 4 that had the Salem area where you have the creepy church building or something where you keep thinking there's a death claw, and there's not, and then randomly, death claw right in your face.
So there is a death claw, but it's the people tell you that it's haunted, and that's why you go in the first place. And so you think there's ghosts there, and then it turns out, nope, it's just a death claw. Yeah. I mean, not just a death claw, but...
But that's a great little mission, and like things like that helps you appreciate the history. Yeah. It's those layers of whenever they do somewhere very memorable, it matters. And I would say one of the things that they should do...
Well, one of the things... I thought that the history in Fallout 4 was really cool because they have you go on that walk to find...
I'm trying to remember.
What's the group that Preston Garvey's in? To find their to find the Minutemen in the first place, they have you take this history walk, which is a real history walk in our world, and you go through and like this robot leads and explains the history of this building and that building.
Yeah, and that helps. And then when you do get their main base, it's like an old fort from.
It was a museum.
Right, and so it is cool. It is cool, and I really hope someday though that they make a Fallout game outside of the United States.
I would love that.
Because how interesting would it be to experience what happened in England or what happened in China?
Because like what happened in Russia? Because we don't know are the other countries as destroyed as the U.S. are. We have no idea.
Right. No clue. Like, that I want to know. I want to know that really bad because I'm glad we've done all the Fallout stuff in America, but I'm ready to see something else.
And I think they'll try to show us that eventually, but unfortunately, I have a feeling they'll try to do it in 76.
Ew. I will say this. I think it would be so cool to see Fallout Russia. And we go, and it's in Moscow. So we get to walk through the Kremlin, you know? Like something like that. Like experience that, what happened there, and get some other history. Be really cool. But any other thoughts for Fallout? We've talked a lot about these games. There's a lot to go.
They're a lot of fun. So for an honorable mention, I want to throw out that even though it's not a Fallout game, I love The Outer Worlds. That was such a good game. It's made by Oblivion, who made Fallout New Vegas, and on top of that, they got a lot of the story writers from the original 2 Fallouts. So in a lot of ways, it's almost more Fallout than the more recent Fallouts have been.
That's on my next to playlist, and I love sci-fi games.
It is so fun, and it's not exactly an open world. It's a semi-open world. It's not exactly an open world like these ones are. You travel from one world to the next, and you go to the areas, and then you can travel back to worlds. And
so there's open worlds inside of those little areas. But
yeah, but you have your spaceship that you take from one planet to the other.
I'm looking forward to that because I love sci-fi, and these games, they're sci-fi, but they're not, but they are. And that's like full on.
Yeah, and
so I'm looking forward to that.
And it's good.
I'm just waiting to buy it on sale with several of the DLCs so I can just get it all. So, Fallout, have you played them? What did you think? What's your top one? And in our next video, we'll be talking about DLCs because, let's be honest, the DLCs make these games. So we're the Keepers of Nerddom, and like, share, subscribe, comment. We want to know what your favorite Fallout game is. Take care.
Bye.